Dryfloon's sinister purpose. Under the cloak of night, the city's heartbeat slows, its bustling rhythm giving way to a haunting silence that whispers of untold stories. It is in this stillness that the veil between worlds grows thin, allowing shadows to take form and the unseen to be glimpsed in the darkest corner of the city, where the light of the street lamps dares not reach. An unsettling presence stirs. It is here that Dryfloon, the balloon Pokémon, emerges from the ether. Its form shrouded in mystery and malice, Dryfloon is no mere child's plaything. It is a creature of the night, a silent predator cloaked in the guise of innocence. The city, unaware of the malevolent force that now drifts among its streets, continues its slumber, oblivious to the creeping dread that encroaches upon its dreams. Dryfloon, drawn to the purity of a child's spirit, seeks out the lonely and the lost, those whose laughter has long since faded into the echo of memory. As Dryfloon floats through the desolate alleyways, its hollow eyes scanning for a soul to ensnare, the air grows colder, the shadows deeper. An ominous chill settles over the city, a harbinger of the doom that rides on the wind. And then it finds what it has been searching for: a child, alone and vulnerable, standing and playing underneath a street light. Without any knowledge of the dangers around him, the child, a happy expression to its face, aimlessly plays around, unwittingly inviting the darkness in. Dryfloon approaches, its intentions hidden behind a facade of whimsy, but there is no warmth in its touch, no kindness in its gesture. With a string-like arm, it beckons, and the child, mesmerized by the promise of adventure, takes hold. The journey begins, not with fanfare, but with a silence that screams. The city fades away, and the child is led down into the depths where light cannot penetrate. Here, in the heart of darkness, Dryfloon reveals its true nature, a specter of death, a thief of souls. The child, now aware of the grim fate that awaits, struggles against the inevitable, but Dryfloon is relentless, its grip tightening like a noose. There is no escape, no hero to save the day. There is only the end, swift and merciless. As the first light of dawn creeps over the horizon, the city awakens, none the wiser to the tragedy that has unfolded in its shadows. Dryfloon has vanished, and with it the child, now nothing more than a whisper on the wind. The cursed SpongeBob episode. I remember that fateful evening, and I was 8 years old by the time, when my curiosity led me to the forbidden depths of late-night television. The clock's hands pointed to the witching hour, and the room was bathed in an eerie glow from the screen. I nestled under my blanket, clutching my stuffed bear, Mr. Twinkles, as if he could shield me from the impending horror. A SpongeBob episode is playing. The episode was titled Graveyard Shift. It's the same episode that I saw the day prior, but somehow this is different. The familiar underwater town of Bikini Bottom seems distorted, its colors muted, and the laughter of SpongeBob and his friends replaced by a haunting silence. The opening scene showed the Krusty Krab, but it was different, darker, more sinister. Mr. Krabs, with hollow eyes and a twisted grin, welcomed a new employee, the hash-slinging slasher. His face was obscured by a tattered hat, and his apron bore stains that looked suspiciously like blood. The other characters exchanged nervous glances, but they dared not speak his name aloud. The air grew colder, and I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I told myself, "This is not the episode I saw. What is this?" Out of curiosity, I just continued watching. As the episode unfolded, the hash-slinging slasher revealed his true nature. He was no ordinary fry cook. He was a vengeful spirit, cursed to roam the Krusty Krab for eternity, his weapon of choice. A spatula with a jagged edge, dripping with malevolence. His appearance looked like the one on the original episode, but this time he's mangled, unrecognizable at first glance, and he is monstrous. His drawing style is more detailed and out of art than usual. He has blood all over his twisted body and scary dark caved-in eyes. Everyone seems to be fine about it. The other fish in the show doesn't recognize this creature as different at all. The tension escalated when the restaurant emptied, leaving only SpongeBob, Squidward, and the hash-slinging slasher. The monstrous figure approached Squidward, whispering secrets that twisted his expression into one of sheer terror. Squidward now starts to puke blood all over the cash register, and his eyes caved in as well, bleeding in the process. There were also graphic images of what looks like a real crop, but was played in a very quick succession. Then the episode continues with SpongeBob, oblivious to the danger, continuing flipping Krabby Patties, unaware that each patty contained a piece of Mr. Krab's body and meat, as he was killed by the slasher right after he introduced the slasher with the gang. And then it happened. The lights went out. The screen turned pitch black, and I could hear my own heartbeat when the light returned. The hash-slinging slasher stood inches away from SpongeBob. Spatula raised, his eyes glowed crimson red, and he said this in a very scary way. "Are you ready, SpongeBob?" as he smiles with his slashed-up mangled face. SpongeBob's laughter turned to screams as the slasher swung the spatula down. The screen cut to black, leaving the outcome unknown. I quickly turned off the TV and ran into my bed scared for my life, not knowing what I just witnessed. I could not sleep that night as every time I closed my eyes, I imagined the slasher's face mangled and out of proportion. It made me really scared. The next morning I just woke up not knowing how I fell asleep. I went out of my room and was greeted by my parents. I told them what I had just witnessed the night prior. At first they scolded me for being up late, but they still listened to what I had to say. My parents dismissed my fears, attributing them to an overactive imagination, but they didn't understand the altered graveyard shift episode was real, and I could have never made such horror up. To this day, I avoid late-night TV, fearful that another cursed episode might find its way into my mind. I'm still very scared of ever wanting to witness such episodes, and to whoever made that episode and aired it that night. You will forever be in my hate list, and if ever anyone had seen the same episode, please comment down below. Echoes of reality. I used to isolate myself from the outside world as a kid. After my parents passed away tragically, I was left on my own and drowned in narcolepsy. However, salvation came to me on that fateful day when a youngster by the name of Evan reached out to me and made a friend out of him by sharing stories about his travels and youthful desires. He was the one who broke my seclusion and brought me into the group, the Echoes. Like me, the Echoes were outcasts. David, the soft-spoken singer, Brian, the stoic artist, Natalie, the mysterious girl with silver eyes, and Evan, the captivating leader. We created an indestructible relationship of battling evil and upholding justice in our own imaginations. The deserted amusement park on the outskirts of town served as our playground, with laughter resonating through rusting roller coasters and long-forgotten memories. The group frequently assists the residents of the town with their everyday concerns, for example, giving their pets food and water, or lending a helping hand when needed. And once we finish these kinds of activities, we hang out at our hidden base. We discuss a wide range of topics, including our desires, fears, and life objectives. The group found a lost dog one day and decided to take care of it. It was frail and needed assistance to live. It was assaulted by a bad guy who tried to hunt and eat it, but it managed to escape. Even after all that, the dog was still able to trust humans as it went to us for help. Natalie became the point person to take full care of the dog. We named it Spark, as it clinged for life and never let that spark of life go away. Years went by, and we continued to cling to our common past even in high school. As a senior, Evan made the decision to bring the Echoes back. His prognosis was dire. We would not be spending another year together. We made the decision to reunite and spend time together at the defunct amusement park, which serves as our covert base. Certain news is going around in newspapers, as well as on the internet, concerning a mass murderer who is at large and skulking in the nearby town. We were very cautious, but because they already know where he is, we are certain that he will be detained shortly. Following that, a mysterious letter that Natalie found pinned to Spark's collar. We wondered why it was concealed and who sent it, as its writing seemed to flow, and it spelled out our destiny. Uncover the secret of this world. The Echoes set off on a mission. We were perplexed and unsure of what would be disclosed and what mysteries we would have to solve in order to decipher the meaning of the message. We had no idea where to begin searching for leads, proof, or even answers, since we were lost. The nightmare that kept happening was, however, the unsettling aspect, the one that bit me in the brain. There we stood, staring into the distance, our laughter turning to silence. If we were brave enough to take a jump, the emptiness beckoned with answers, and the same question kept coming up. What are you willing to sacrifice? Every time one of these nightmares comes true, I hurt so deeply. It nearly seemed as though there was nothing I could do to lessen the anguish. The ache subsides as I awaken. As I pass the TV, the story of the mass murderer is making the rounds once more. He is still at large and has not been apprehended on their route to a school trip. He opened fire on a bus carrying kids. Despite the fact that it terrified me greatly, I ignored it and carried on with my day. But then something happened. Reality merged with our memories of our last few days together. The theme park transformed, the rides on fire, people fleeing in terror, and my companions and I wounded and nearly dead from bullet wounds. We were a sight to behold, as Brian, David, and Natalie's souls vanished before my very eyes. Evan reached out to me, telling me to run and save myself. I became perplexed, unsure of what was taking place or what was ahead. Was the agony I'd been experiencing in my nightmares all real? With no idea what to do when I reached my buddies, I panicked and began crawling in their direction. I nevertheless went through it, even though I'm starting to feel the agonizing Evan mentioned alternative universes and different versions of ourselves, whispering we're echoes of something greater, our existence a cosmic glitch. A fissure in reality was the key to this planet. We refused to die when it was our destiny to fade. Then I had a clear memory of everything, all of the events that have occurred thus far. Our field trip to this amusement park went well, and we were the kids on the bus that was featured in the press. But then something went wrong. This amusement park is the scene of the mass murder that has been widely reported on, and began shooting everyone nearby, causing mayhem. He caught up to us while we were running, and shot every one of us. That being said, he left, happy with his accomplishment. However, he failed to find out if we had passed away. My thoughts began to wonder, was this the life we were living? Even authentic? Was the time I spent with my buddies real? Evan answered all my inquiries as if he could read my thoughts, then muttered once more, "Yes, it's all real. I was there with you as he was dying." In the center of the theme park, I had to make the most important decision. A hungry void yawned in front of us, awaiting our souls. My awareness gradually vanished. My eyes were flickering away from the life I knew. I could recall every detail of what had transpired, and all I knew, however, it differs differently from the one I've encountered. I was in a hospital bed when I woke. David, Brian, Natalie, and Evan were gone. However, their murmurs persisted, imploring me to survive and to keep in mind. As I recovered, I began investigating what had transpired that day. As it happens, I spent months in a coma following that event. My body is struggling to survive. That day, the mass murderer was shot, knowing that he would be unable to carry out any more horrible deeds relieved me greatly. After a few more months, the hospital released me. I have treasured my life ever since then. I still can't get over what transpired that day, though, because it will always haunt me. My pals will always be in my memory. Spectral limbo. The clock struck midnight, and the world outside my window had sunk into an inky silence. I was alone, the only heartbeat in a house that seemed to echo with the memories of laughter and warmth, now replaced by a chilling stillness. The walls whispered with the subtle creaks and groans of age, as if conversing in hushed tones about the living soul amongst them. I nestled deeper into the couch, the glow of the TV casting ghostly shadows that danced across the room. It was then I heard it, a faint tapping, like the delicate fingers of a child rapping against the glass. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The tapping grew more insistent, more desperate. I mustered the courage to approach the window, peering into the darkness. Nothing, just the empty street and the occasional flutter of leaves in the wind. Returning to my seat, I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, a trick of solitude playing on my mind, but the house seemed to disagree. The air grew colder, the shadows darker, and the silence was shattered by a sudden, sharp crash from upstairs. My heart raced. pounding against my ribs as I contemplated the impossible. There was no one else here, no one to make such a noise. With trembling hands, I reached for the baseball bat. I kept for security the weight of it, both a comfort and a burden. I ascended the stairs, each step creaking underfoot like an announcement of my approach. The hallway was a tunnel of darkness, each door a gateway to further shadows. The crash had come from the spare room, a place I seldom ventured. I pushed the door open, the bat raised high, ready to confront nothing. The room was undisturbed, save for the open window and the curtains billowing like specters in the breeze. Relief washed over me, followed swiftly by confusion. Had I left the window open? I couldn't remember. As I moved to close it, a glint of light caught my eye. There, on the floor, lay a small, antique locket, its chain tangled, its surface scratched and worn. I had never seen it before. Picking it up, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The locket was ice gold, and it seemed to throb with a life of its own. I opened it, and inside was a picture, faded with time, of a woman. Her eyes, dark and deep, bore into mine with an intensity that felt almost alive. The air grew thick, the shadows in the corners of the room gathered like storm clouds, and a voice, soft and melodic, filled the space around me. "Thank you for finding me," it whispered. I dropped the locket in horror, backing away as the temperature plummeted, my breath visible in the air. The woman's voice laughed, a sound that twisted with malice. "You're not alone anymore," she said. And then the lights flickered, the room spun, and I was falling into darkness. When I awoke, it was morning, the sun streaming through the windows with the promise of a new day. The locket was gone, the window closed, and the house was silent once more. But something had changed. I could feel it, a presence lingering just out of sight, watching, waiting. Days passed, and the presence grew stronger, the nights longer, the shadows more daring. I was no longer alone in my house, and the realization was a weight I could not bear. I decided to leave, to escape the haunting that had claimed my home. But as I packed my bags, I found it, the locket, nestled amongst my clothes, its chain no longer tangled, its surface polished to a shine. The woman's picture was gone, replaced by my own reflection, staring back at me with eyes that were not quite my own. I understood then the house hadn't been haunted by a spirit. It was me, my own reflection, my own presence that filled the rooms with dread. I was the ghost in my own home, trapped in a loop of time, destined to relive that night over and over, the night when the attack happened. It's the same normal night. I was chilling on my couch watching TV when a robber entered my house. The tapping noise was them trying to enter in a very discreet way. At first, they were not able to enter as I locked myself in my house as I am all alone. I made sure that everything is locked for my own safety, but that wasn't enough for these robbers. They managed to find the only weakness of this house, which is the window to that spare room. It was on the second floor. It's a little bit broken, but I got that locked up properly, so I did not really pay much attention to it. As I thought, no one will break through on the second floor. But it was dumb for me to not get that fixed, as evidently they managed to enter the premises. I prepared myself for the worst, grabbing my trusty bat for protection. Before I even got to the second floor, I was shot. I did not succumb easily as I managed to take another step before they opened fire again, this time finally ending me. The story ends here, but for me it never truly does. Each night, as the clock strikes midnight, I am there, alone in my house, something eerie happening around me, and the dread that keeps me awake at night. Parasite. In the verdant heart of Mindanao, where the jungle's embrace holds secrets of a time long forgotten, the villagers of Balintawak lived in harmony with the land. Their days were filled with the simple joys of rural life, the rhythms of nature dictating the ebb and flow of their existence. But one fateful night, the heavens themselves seemed to cry out in anguish as a fiery harbinger tore through the sky, its tail a blazing testament to its otherworldly origin. The meteorite, carrying within it the malevolent life form known as the pupa, crashed into the outskirts of the village with a force that shook the earth and silenced the nocturnal chorus of the jungle. The impact left a crater, smoldering in deep, a wound upon the land that would soon fester and spread its infection. Mang Tomas, an elder revered for his wisdom and his tales of spirits and deities, was the first to witness the aftermath. His lantern cast long shadows as he approached the site, the air thick with the scent of charred vegetation. The meteorite lay at the center, pulsing with a sinister energy that seemed to beckon him closer. Compelled by a mixture of fear and curiosity, Man Tomas reached out to touch the alien stone. It was then that the pupa weighed its move, a mass of tendrils erupting from the meteorite's core, latching on to him with a predatory hunger. The transformation was immediate and horrific. His cries of agony echoed through the night as his body was reshaped into a grotesque mockery of human form. In the days that followed, strange occurrences began to plague Balintawak. Livestock were found mutilated in the fields, their bodies twisted and broken. Unseen creatures stalked the jungle's edge, their eyes glowing with an unholy light. Whispers of a curse spread among the villagers, a fear that the old stories of malevolent spirits might hold more truth than they had ever dared to believe. The pupa, now wearing the guise of Mang Tomas, moved among the villagers, its presence a blight upon the land. It sought out the isolated and the weak, those who strayed too far from the safety of their homes. Each victim fell prey to its insidious embrace, their bodies becoming vessels for the parasite's offspring, their humanity stripped away as they were turned into instruments of death. The villagers, now prisoners in their own homes, watched in horror as the night sky was set ablaze with an otherworldly aurora. It was a signal, a beacon calling out to the depths of space, announcing that the pupa had found a new realm to conquer. As the pupa's insidious presence took hold in Mindanao, the once tranquil village of Balintawak became a nexus of nightmares. The parasite's ability to warp and twist its hosts into grotesque forms was only matched by its cunning, as it learned to mimic human behavior, weaving itself into the fabric of daily life with malevolent intent. The first signs of the pupa's spread were subtle yet disturbing. Lena, the young mother who had been claimed by the darkness, returned to her family. Her husband, Raymond, overjoyed by her return, failed to notice the coldness in her touch, the vacant stare in her eyes, and the slight hitch in her gait. It was only when he witnessed her consuming the family pet in the dead of night, her jaw unhinging like a snake's, that the horrific truth dawned on him. In the following days, more villagers succumbed to the pupa's influence. Father Matteo, the village priest, began to speak in sermons of fire and brimstone, his voice no longer soothing but sharp and discordant. The children, once playful and carefree, now moved with a purpose beyond their years, their laughter replaced by an eerie silence. The jungle itself seemed to recoil from the village, the animals fleeing deeper into the wilderness, as if aware of the abomination that now walked among the trees. The plants near the crater withered, their life force drained by the alien presence that had taken root in their midst. As the pupa's hosts grew in number, they began to venture beyond the village, into the neighboring towns. They spread the parasite's reach, claiming new victims with each passing night. The once bustling markets of Cagayan de Oro fell silent, the streets empty save for the occasional echo of footsteps that belonged to neither man nor beast. The military, sent to contain the situation, found themselves outmatched by the pupa's adaptability. Their weapons proved ineffective against hosts whose bodies could heal at an alarming rate, whose limbs could transform into shields and blades. The soldiers' communications were filled with reports of figures that could vanish into thin air, only to reappear moments later, their hands dripping with the blood of their comrades. As the pupa's influence spread across Mindanao, the island became a tapestry of terror. Entire villages were abandoned, their inhabitants either fled or transformed. The parasite's hosts moved with a singular purpose, their actions coordinated as if by a hive mind. They were no longer individuals, but extensions of the pupa's will, their humanity erased by the alien invader. The story of Balintawak and its fall became a whispered legend among the survivors. Tales of the pupa's hosts, their bodies capable of unspeakable horrors, became the stuff of nightmares. The once vibrant culture of Mindanao, rich with tradition and history, was now overshadowed by the specter of the pupa, a reminder of the fragility of life and the unknown dangers that lurk in the cosmos. The island of Mindanao, once a tapestry of lush greenery and vibrant culture, had become a desolate wasteland under the pupa's reign. The parasite's spread was relentless, its hosts now numbering in the hundreds, each one a harbinger of death and decay. The once fertile fields of Balintawak lay fallow, the crops withered and dying, choked by an unseen blight. The fishermen's boats floated aimlessly in the harbor, their nets empty, and their owners lost to the pupa's hunger. The jungle, which had once teemed with life, was now silent, its creatures either fled or consumed by the hosts. The village itself was a ghost town, the laughter of children replaced by the howling of the wind through abandoned homes. The pupa's hosts, their bodies grotesque parodies of their former selves, roamed the streets. They were no longer the people of Balintawak. They were the pupa's spawn, their humanity stripped away, leaving only the drive to feed and multiply. In the neighboring town of Cagayan de Oro, the situation was no better. The military's quarantine had failed, and the pupa had breached the town's defenses. The soldiers, once confident in their ability to contain the threat, now fought a losing battle against an enemy that could not be killed by conventional means. The hosts moved with a terrifying efficiency, their attacks coordinated and ruthless. They struck at night, their forms barely visible in the darkness, their presence announced only by the screams of their victims. The townspeople barricaded themselves in their homes, praying for a dawn that would bring salvation But the pupa had no concept of mercy. As the parasite's influence grew, strange phenomena began to occur. The sky above Mindanao darkened, even during the day, as if the sun itself was afraid to shine upon the island. The waters around the coast turned a murky red, the blood of the pupa's victims carried by the currents. The air was thick with the stench of death, a constant reminder of the horror that had befallen the land. The few survivors who remained spoke of seeing figures standing motionless at the edge of the jungle, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. They whispered of the sounds that came from the crater at night, a chorus of alien voices that seemed to speak in a language older than time itself. The pupa's hosts began to change, their bodies evolving into even more horrific forms. Some grew wings, dark and leathery, taking to the skies in search of prey. Others developed thick, chitinous armor, impervious to bullets and blades. And some vanished entirely, their forms melting into the shadows, only to reappear elsewhere, their mouths dripping with fresh blood. The story of Mindanao's desolation spread across the Philippines, a tale of woe and warning. The pupa had turned the island into a breeding ground for its kind, a stronghold from which it could launch its conquest of the world. And as the rest of humanity looked on in horror, they could only wonder if their home would be next. As the pupa's dark embrace tightened around Mindanao, the world beyond its shores could only watch in horror and disbelief. The island, once a beacon of natural beauty and cultural richness, had become a nightmarish tableau of alien domination. The skies over Mindanao, perpetually shrouded in darkness, bore witness to the final stages of the pupa's conquest. The few remaining military outposts sent distress signals into the void, their pleas for help lost amidst the cacophony of chaos that had engulfed the island. In the towns and villages that had once dotted the landscape, the silence was deafening. The pupa's hosts, now the sole occupants, roamed the empty streets and abandoned homes. They were no longer bound by the parasite's need for secrecy. Their grotesque forms were displayed openly, a testament to the pupa's complete control. The once vibrant city of Davao, a hub of commerce and life, was now a desolate ghost town. Its towering buildings stood as mausoleums to the fallen, their windows dark and lifeless. The pupa's hosts patrolled the city's limits, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of escapees. In the rural areas, the land itself seemed to mourn. The rice terraces of Banao, once a marvel of human ingenuity, lay neglected and overgrown. The terraces' intricate patterns, which had for centuries been a symbol of harmony between man and nature, were now marred by the pupa's corruption. The seas around Mindanao, once teeming with marine life, were now a graveyard. The fish had either fled or been consumed, and the once clear waters were tainted with the residue of the pupa's presence. The beaches, where families had once gathered to celebrate and relax, were now landing sites for the pupa's aerial hosts, their winged silhouettes a grim reminder of the island's fate. Amidst the desolation, there were tales of resistance. Small groups of survivors, hidden in the depths of the jungle or barricaded in the mountains, held on to the hope of reclaiming their home. They spoke in hushed tones of a plan to fight back, to find a weakness in the pupa's armor. But these stories were mere whispers on the wind, the last embers of hope in a world gone dark. The international community, paralyzed by fear and uncertainty debated the best course of action. Some called for a quarantine of the entire region, while others argued for a full-scale assault to reclaim the island. But the truth was clear. Mindanao was lost, and with it, a piece of humanity's soul. The pupa, content with its victory, turned its gaze to the stars once more. The aurora that danced above Mindanao was not just a beacon. It was a signal, a call to others of its kind. And as the world watched the skies with trepidation, they could not shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. You never know who really walks amongst us. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you again next week.